Namaskar, this is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. We come to you tonight with news of another tragedy, a plane crash in Ahmedabad, an Air India passenger plane that took off for London and crashed within minutes. More than 200 people reported dead. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families of the victims. The pictures are shocking and heartbreaking. How did the plane crash right after takeoff? Was it engine failure? Was it human error? It's too early to say. Among the dead is a former Chief Minister of Gujarat. And so far, there is news of just one survivor. It's no less than a miracle. We will tell you how it unfolded, what the investigators are looking for, what does this crash mean for Air India, and why Boeing stocks have crashed. Leaders from across the world have sent condolences and messages of support to India. We'll also be tracking the riots in the United States, why the UK Prime Minister has refused to meet Bangladesh's Mohammed Yunus, how Canada has busted Khalistani narco-terror plot, why the US is pulling out its people from West Asia as a bigger war with Iran brewing there, and why Vietnam is merging cities and firing employees. First, the headlines. The dollar dives after US President Donald Trump's new trade threat. It lost 1% against the euro, falling to its lowest point in more than 3 years. Trump has said he will unveil unilateral tariffs within weeks. In April, he had imposed a blanket 10% tariff on most trading partners, but had put that decision on hold soon after. Colombia's president accuses the US of plotting a coup. He echoed remarks made by Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, who has accused the US Secretary of State of leading a coup attempt against Petro. Since 2022, President Petro has been in office. Colombia is currently facing its biggest security crisis in a decade. A US and Israeli-backed charity accuses Hamas of killing 8 of its aid workers. The group said a bus carrying its staff was attacked near Khan Yunis. Hamas claims the charity is used by Israeli forces to lure Gazans into death traps. Israel accuses Hamas of weaponizing suffering in Gaza. Indonesia's president will meet his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin next week. This will be President Prabowo Subianto's first visit to Russia since taking office. Jakarta has refused to take sides in the Ukraine war, and it looks to boost ties with Moscow. Indonesia is Southeast Asia's biggest economy. And South Africa races against time to find survivors of its deadly floods, which ravaged a coastal province earlier this week. More than 50 people have lost their lives. Torrential rains triggered heavy flooding and landslides. President Cyril Ramaphosa will visit the disaster-hit region tomorrow. It's a terrible day to do the news because there's only grief and heartbreak today. I'm sure you've seen the pictures already. An Air India plane crashed in Ahmedabad today. It took off in the afternoon, but within minutes, it plunged to the ground, right into a college hostel near the airport. The crash was captured on camera. Take a look.
पूरे ही गए होंगे।
You can imagine what those people went through. They were traveling to London today. Maybe to meet family, maybe for vacation, maybe for a job or a college degree. Whatever the reason, you can imagine their emotions. You can also imagine the horror that followed. That's what makes aviation disasters so heartbreaking, the scale and the suddenness of it. The question is, how did this one happen? Let's retrace the plane's journey. This flight was operated by Air India. It used to be India's state-run flight carrier, but in 2022, Air India was bought by the Tata Group. The plane that crashed today was a Boeing 7878 Dreamliner. It is a wide-body passenger plane. It can carry up to 250 people. Now we come to the journey itself. This flight was heading to London's Gatwick Airport. It was carrying 242 people. That's 230 passengers, 10 crew members and 2 pilots, 242 in all. Some foreign nationals were among the passengers, 53 British citizens, 1 Canadian citizen and 7 Portuguese nationals. The remaining 169 passengers were Indian. That's what the flight manifest says. The plane took off from Ahmedabad at 1:38 p.m. local time. It climbed up to an altitude of 625 feet. But within minutes, the plane started dropping. And you saw what happened next. The aircraft crashed into a nearby building. It seems the pilots knew that something was wrong because immediately after takeoff, they reached out to Air Traffic Control or ATC and they raised a Mayday call, which is basically a call of distress. And after that, the ATC got back to the aircraft, but there was no response from the other side. Perhaps there was a loss of signal or the plane had already crashed. Now, I know what all of you are thinking. How did the crash happen? Planes are considered the safest modes of transport. This plane, the 787, has never crashed before. So what went wrong this time? Let's go back to the crash visuals. You can see that the plane is struggling to gain altitude. The nose is pointing up, but the rear of the plane just kept plunging. Experts say this shows that the aircraft could not gain lift. Now, what does that mean? Lift is basically a force that pushes the plane up. It allows the aircraft to take off from the ground. It also holds the aircraft in the air. If the plane gathers enough lift, it can climb up and fly away. If not, this can happen, a crash. Of course, the next question is, why wasn't there enough lift? Hundreds of flights take off every day. Why did this one not gain lift? I'm sure an investigation will answer that. We do not wish to speculate here. Investigators will have to recover the black box. They will have to analyze the data. Only then will we know for sure. Having said that, experts have floated multiple theories like engine failure or bird hits, technical snags or wrong takeoff configurations. The fact is we cannot be sure, especially looking at the information that we have. Like I said, the 787 is a pretty reliable aircraft. It has never been in a crash before. Plus, this wasn't some old aircraft either. This particular 787 made its first flight in December 2013. It was delivered to Air India in January 2014, so the plane was just 10 years old. For perspective, an average aircraft is in service for up to 30 years. So this plane was not all that old, 10 years old. And what about the pilots? The plane was commanded by Captain Sumit Sabharwal. His co-pilot was First Officer Clive Kundar. The captain had 8,200 hours of flying experience and the co-pilot had 1,100 hours. So clearly experience was not a problem either. I know it's tempting to dig deeper into what happened, to fall into a rabbit hole, but we would advise against it. Air crash investigations are extremely complicated and sensitive. There are families involved. There are victims involved. So do not turn it into a game of speculation. With that said, let's look at the aftermath. The plane crashed into a residential area in Ahmedabad, specifically near a medical college hostel. Parts of the plane were strewn across the area. Take a look at this. There's debris all around the place, and the fire seems to have charred nearby buildings. And casualties, well, the count is still being updated. Most of the injured were rushed to nearby hospitals. Reports say more than 200 deaths have been confirmed. Now, we are not sure if these fatalities are passengers or people living in the hostel. More than 200 confirmed so far. It could take time to ascertain that detail. Which brings us to the government response. Gujarat's Chief Minister visited survivors in the hospital. The Union Aviation Minister is also in Ahmedabad. A control room has been activated at the Aviation Ministry. A hotline has also been established. We are flashing the numbers on your screen. Do reach out if you need any kind of support. As for the rescue efforts, they are expected to take time. You can see the amount of debris and damage. It won't be easy to clear all of this out. Having said that, it's all hands on deck in Ahmedabad. You've got your rapid action forces, you've got the Central Industrial Security Force or CISF, you've got the Central Reserve Police Force or CRPF, and of course you've got the local authorities. All of them are pulling together to help the survivors. The political leadership is also monitoring the events. We have a quote from Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This is what he said. The tragedy in Ahmedabad has stunned and saddened us. It is heartbreaking beyond words. In this sad hour, my thoughts are with everyone affected by it. Reactions are coming in from across the world. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer called the crash devastating. Russian President Vladimir Putin extended his sympathies to the families. Ukraine's President Zelensky expressed his condolences. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said that he was saddened by the crash. The Maldivian president pledged solidarity with India. The European Union president called the news heartbreaking. The Chinese ambassador promised solidarity with those affected. As always, grief tends to be a bridge. It brings the whole world together. But India won't be forgetting this tragedy soon. Incidents like these tend to leave a mark on our policy, on our psyche, and our worldview. It happened within minutes. The Air India plane crashed just over 1 minute after takeoff. There's shock, grief, disbelief, and a barrage of questions. How does something like this happen? How can a plane go down just moments after leaving the runway? As I've been saying, speculation does not help. There's a lot of conversation around this tragedy. Unfortunately, there's misinformation too. So we are trying to piece together the sequence of events. This is what we know so far. And these are the questions that the investigators need to answer. We'll start with the plane. A Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner. These planes were inducted in 2012 when Air India was still in government hands. It was the state carrier. The plane was going from Ahmedabad in Gujarat to the London Gatwick Airport. It took off at 1:38 p.m. local time, and barely a minute after takeoff, the aircraft went missing on the radar. It was at a height of 625 feet. At this point, 1 minute into takeoff, it disappeared from the radar. This is according to a flight tracking website called Flight Radar 24. Now for context, commercial airliners fly between 30,000 to 42,000 feet. 30 to 42,000 feet. This one was at 625 feet. So this plane was still quite low. And minutes after takeoff, it crashed. This was a plane being flown by two experienced pilots. The pilot in command had more than 8,000 hours of experience, and the second in command, the first captain, had 1,100 hours logged. Moments after takeoff, they issued a mayday call. The Indian aviation regulator has confirmed this. This is basically an SOS call. So the pilots figured that something was wrong right after takeoff. There are a lot of theories on whether the plane was fit to fly. We have no concrete information on that front, nothing confirmed that we can share with you at this point. But we can tell you this is how the probe could shape up. It will be led by the AAIB, the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau. It comes under the DGCA, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, which is India's aviation regulator. Their first task is to appoint an investigator who will gather information and data about the aircraft, when and where it was built, the plane's condition and operation records. Next, a team would collect evidence from the crash site. They will photograph the wreckage, map parts of the plane, and preserve any perishable evidence or things that could get lost, like aircraft fragments. But the most important piece of evidence would be this, the black box. And the name is misleading. The black box is actually orange in color, and that is by design. It is built this way so that it can be spotted easily in the wreckage. This black box effectively has two recorders. The first recorder gathers flight data. It is called the Flight Data Recorder, or FDR. It logs all kinds of details like the plane's altitude, speed, engine settings, and even cabin pressure. That is the job of the first recorder. The second one records sound. It is called the Cockpit Voice Recorder, or CVR. It captures every sound inside the cockpit, the conversations between pilots, radio calls, even the background engine noise. All of it is recorded. So the mayday call that the pilots made would have been captured by the CVR, the Cockpit Voice Recorder. Now, both these recorders are kept in hard casings. They're made to survive fire, explosions, even deep water and high-speed impact. So recovering the black box is key to any plane investigation. It may hold the answers to questions like what went wrong with the plane, was it technical failure, or was it human error? So investigators will look for the black box, and once all the evidence is gathered, it will be analyzed. That is the final stage of the investigation. Here, the team reviews all the collected information. They could bring in outside experts to analyze it, like senior pilots, plane engineers, aviation experts. Specialized labs could be engaged to assess the evidence, and once everything is in place, a final report will be written and released.
Very tragic and very, very horrific. And even till now, I have to say I'm in a state of shock. We are not going to spare anyone. We are not going to leave any stone unturned. We will do properly according to the protocol, and we are going to go to the depth of why this incident has happened. That much I can tell you now.
India may also collaborate with international regulators. The US has already announced a team. They will be traveling to India soon to assist Indian investigators. It may take weeks, even months, for the full picture to emerge. Everything you hear before that is a theory. So wait for confirmation. I know it's a difficult and delicate time, and it's important to push for answers. We must know what went wrong to ensure that it's not repeated. Throughout the day, families have gathered outside the civil hospital in Ahmedabad. This is where the victims, the crash victims, were taken. All day, they have scrambled for updates. Relatives have desperately looked for their loved ones. But while this happened, on a bed in the same hospital lay a 40-year-old man. His name is Vishwas Kumar Ramesh. He is a survivor of today's deadly crash. And according to reports so far, the only survivor. If you believe in miracles, this is it. Ramesh is a British national. He has lived in London for years now with his wife and child. He was in India for a few days for a family reunion, but it turned into a brush with death. Today, Ramesh got on the doomed Air India flight, hoping to return to London. But a few seconds after takeoff, there was a loud noise, and then the plane crashed. It all happened very quickly, and the rest was almost a blur to him. But when Ramesh woke up, there were bodies all around him. He was injured in his chest, feet, and eyes. He was scared, but he says he stood up and ran. He was on seat 11A, so he jumped out of the emergency exit and emerged from the inferno. Soon someone found him in the wreckage, possibly someone from the rescue team. They got him on an ambulance, took him to the hospital, and Ramesh survived the tragic incident. He has cheated death. But not everyone was this lucky, including a young bride on her way to meet her husband. 2 siblings, excited about their vacation, and a couple, along with their 3 young children, hoping to start afresh. When the Air India flight took off, so did the joy, the hopes, and the dreams of 242 people. But as the journey turned into tragedy, it has destroyed dozens of families. Here is a report.
Khushbu Rajpurohit, a resident of Rajasthan, got married in January. Her husband works in London, and she was about to meet him for the first time since the wedding. So yesterday she made the journey from Rajasthan to Gujarat. Rajpurohit's family dropped her off at the Ahmedabad airport. She boarded the Air India Boeing 787 Dreamliner, along with 241 others. And now, her husband doesn't know if his bride is still alive. Dozens of family members of the crash victims mirror this anxiety. 242 people on the flight were travelling to London today. Some of them to meet family members, some going on a vacation. But the journey turned tragic soon after takeoff. Hundreds of people have died. Among the victims is Kongrelatpam Ngantoi Sharma. She was one of the crew members on the flight. Before the takeoff, she messaged her sister, "I'm going to London. In a few minutes, we'll take off. We may not be able to talk for a while." Now, her family's grief knows no bounds. Two siblings, Shubh and Shagun Modi from Rajasthan, are also among the victims. They were going to London for a vacation. Pratik Joshi, a resident of Rajasthan, was also on the flight, along with his wife, a doctor, and 3 young children, an 8-year-old and 2 5-year-old twins. The family was planning to settle down in London and start afresh. Unfortunately, all of them died in the crash. Former Gujarat Chief Minister Vijay Rupani was also on the doomed flight. He was going to visit his wife in London. All day, neighbours and supporters have gathered outside his home. People have held prayers for his safety, but only grim news awaited them.
मुख्यमंत्री श्री विजय भाई रूपाणी भी इसी फ्लाइट में अपने परिवार को मिलने के लिए जा रहे थे। वो भी इस हादसा का शिकार हुए हैं। भगवान उनकी भी आत्मा को शांति दे।
Most of today, families and loved ones of the victims have gathered outside the civil hospital in Ahmedabad, where the crash victims were taken. They have scrambled to hear news about their loved ones. By evening, many of them are still inside the hospital, hoping against hope. But given the scale of the accident, identification has been a hurdle.
सारी डेड बॉडीज है और अब पहचानना भी मुश्किल है और अभी कुछ बता नहीं सकते। सास और ससुर दोनों इस फ्लाइट में थे और यूके ही जा रहे थे हमारे साली को मिलने।
एयर में जा रहे थे वो मेरे छोटे भाई अर्जुन शिव सिंह वासनिया है और उनके घर वाली वो दिव्या बेन और अर्जुन सिंह वासनिया है। वो लोग अपनी बेटी को मिलने के लिए लंदन जा रहे थे और अभी तक मुझे कोई इनका समाचार मिला नहीं। मैं इंतजार कर रहा हूँ।
Amid grim chances of survival for families of loved ones, it has been a tussle between heartbreak and hope. As India and the world unites in grieving for the lives lost in this tragedy.
This is not just a crash. This is India's worst aviation disaster in over 2 decades. And more than that, this is a reckoning for Air India. It was a crown jewel of newly independent India, but Air India has since lost its sheen. There have been efforts of revival, but the picture still looks bleak. So what happens now? What does this disaster mean for Air India? To understand that, we'll have to go back to where it all started. Air India was born in 1932. It was founded by J.R.D. Tata. In fact, he flew the first Air India plane himself. Soon it set the gold standard in aviation. Their mascot was a smiling Maharaja. After all, Air India promised a service fit for royalty. And for a long time it did deliver. But somehow along the way the crown slipped. In 1953, Air India was nationalized and slowly the rot began to set in. Air India became a bloated public sector relic. Bureaucracy ballooned, aircraft aged, service standards plummeted, its reputation took a hit and so did its balance sheet. Air India racked up losses of over 70,000 crore rupees. In 2022 came a twist in this tale. The Tata Group bought Air India back. The prodigal airline finally returned to its original home. That was 3 years ago. But this much-hyped homecoming did not change very much, or so it seemed. There were service complaints, technical malfunction and delayed flights. And it wasn't for want of trying. The airline has shown modest gains both in revenue and on-time performance, yet the ghosts of its past continue to haunt. And now this crash raises questions. Reports say a meeting was called today between Air India and the DGCA, India's civil aviation watchdog. The airline has been asked to submit a report on the health of all their aircraft. The Air India CEO has since issued a statement.
I want to brief you on a serious incident that involved an Air India aircraft a short while ago. But first, and most importantly, I would like to express our deep sorrow about this event. This is a difficult day for all of us at Air India, and our efforts now are focused entirely on the needs of our passengers, crew members, their families, and loved ones. I know that there are many questions, and at this stage, I will not be able to answer all of them.
There is no clarity on what happened, but this is the worst case scenario for any airline. A crash is not just a human tragedy, it is a corporate earthquake. The impact is immediate. Bookings collapse, stocks plummet, headlines scream, and the real damage unfolds slowly. Airlines face massive compensation costs, insurance premiums, they skyrocket, regulatory scrutiny tightens. More critically, consumers begin to flinch at the brand because airlines do not just operate on planes and fuel, they run on confidence. Lose that and you're grounded. Look at Malaysia Airlines. In 2014, one of its flights disappeared, the other was shot down. The airline lost billions of dollars and they had to rebrand. Then there are the likes of Fly Jamaica. After a crash in 2019, it had to stop operations. Air India is already staggering under the weight of public frustration, so this disaster could knock it out. Now, we don't yet know the official cause of the crash, engine failure, pilot error, maintenance issues, we don't know. The black box will speak in time. But already this tragedy fits an unsettling pattern. In recent years, Air India has faced multiple technical incidents. Let me show you some reports. In January this year, an Air India flight made an emergency landing in Bengaluru. The issue was engine failure. In 2024, there was a hydraulic issue on a flight from Delhi. It had to be diverted to Russia. Another flight made an emergency landing in Thiruvananthapuram. Again, technical reasons. One Air India plane had to land after a crack in the windshield. A flight from Newark to New Delhi made an emergency landing in Stockholm. This was due to an oil leak in one of the engines. I could go on, but you get the gist. So can Air India survive this one? The short answer is maybe. The long answer is not unless everything changes. Yes, Air India has some things going for it. It is backed by the Tata Group, which has money and influence. It can absorb short-term losses. It still holds valuable international flying rights. And its name still evokes nostalgia among Indian flyers, but just nostalgia does not fill seats. Safety and reliability does. So this crash has changed the stakes. The regulators will move in, insurance providers will circle like hawks, global aviation bodies will demand answers, and flyers, they will flee to other airlines. In a best-case scenario, the crash acts as a catalyst. The Tatas double down, they accelerate fleet renewal and prioritize safety. And that seems to be the goal here. Recently, Air India placed an order to buy 570 new planes. So they need to double down on rebooting the airline. But if history is any guide, such reinventions are rare. Airlines, like empires, have expiry dates. Sometimes they crash before they land. Now we don't know what it will be for Air India. Will it rise from the flames or will it sink under the weight of its own past? Only time and action will tell. We talked about the crash, how it happened and why Air India is under the scanner. But what about the plane itself? The aircraft, it was a Boeing 7878 Dreamliner. It was launched 14 years ago as Boeing's great leap into the future. But this crash may change that. This is the first time a Boeing 787 aircraft has crashed. And Boeing has issued a statement. It says, and I quote, "We are in contact with Air India regarding flight 171 and stand ready to support them." So quite a generic corporate response, but the response from investors was sharper. Boeing shares plunged 8% during pre-market trading because this is not a one-off. Boeing is no stranger to fatal crashes. The company has been under fire for years. So this will be the final nail, or will this be the final nail in the Boeing coffin? First, let's look at the aircraft. The Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner. It was marketed as a revolutionary aircraft. It was supposed to be a game changer in modern aviation. The aircraft first entered into service in 2011. Right now, there are more than 1,175 Dreamliners in service. As we speak, 1,175 Dreamliners. They account for 2,100 flights every day. In total, the Dreamliner has clocked nearly 5 million flights. Air India got its first Dreamliner in 2012. By 2014, they were inducted into the fleet. Since then, it has become a core part of Air India's international routes. I keep saying we don't know what went wrong with today's flight. But we can tell you that a lot has been going wrong for Boeing. In 2024, a whistleblower emerged, a Boeing engineer named Sam Salepur. And he made some big revelations. He said that the 787 was being assembled sloppily. Boeing was taking shortcuts. Body pieces were being aligned in a subpar manner. There was also pressure on engineers. They had to approve work that they hadn't checked. Sam Salepur was one such engineer. So he turned whistleblower. And just months after that, he died mysteriously. But his allegations did not die, and the questions he raised are not new. In 2021, Boeing halted deliveries of new Dreamliners. The US aviation watchdog, the FAA, looked into it. They looked into quality control, especially about how the jet was being assembled. Boeing then made changes to its manufacturing process. Deliveries were soon resumed, and the company maintained that the planes were safe to fly. And we must add here, plane crashes are rare, very, very rare, and most do not shake public trust in aviation. But this one hits different, and that's because of Boeing's past record. In recent years, 2 of its 737 MAX planes have crashed. More than 300 people have lost their lives. Many countries have grounded the 737 MAX planes. And not just that, Boeing has been drowning in bad press for months, with emergency doors blowing off mid-air, loose bolts found in rudders, planes with missing oxygen masks, a CEO forced to resign, and whistleblowers found dead. If this crash is traced back to an aircraft issue, it may be game over for Boeing. It will lose any moral credibility it had left. And for passengers, this is a turning point. They're asking questions they shouldn't have to ask in 2025. Is the flight they're flying a Boeing plane? Is it a 787? Am I safe? I'm afraid we cannot answer these questions. But here's something that we can say. Despite the glaring issues, Boeing will remain in business for the foreseeable future. It can keep delivering subpar planes because airlines do not have alternatives. The airplane industry is a duopoly. There are two major aircraft makers in our world today, Boeing and Airbus. Even together, they're not being able to meet the demand. So there is no way that Airbus alone can build all the planes that the world needs, which explains why Boeing will have a market. And for all the trending hashtags that say, if it's Boeing, I'm not going, the consumer is not really spoiled for choice. That, unfortunately, is where things stand today. In the United States, it's been a week of riots. It started in Los Angeles with anti-immigration raids. And now tensions are boiling over. Last night, there was a curfew in downtown LA. This was for the second straight night. Multiple people were arrested. There was also vandalism. Masked looters rampaged an Apple store in the city. Another video shows rioters outside a Zara outlet. They were seen looting the store. Nearly 400 people have been arrested since last Friday. 157 people were arrested for assault. Federal prosecutors have charged two of them for throwing Molotov cocktails at the police. Meanwhile, the National Guard still remains in the city. Currently, there are 2,000 National Guard troops. Another 2,000 are stationed outside, and 700 more Marines have been mobilized. They will be deployed to LA in the next 48 hours. Add this, together there are almost 4,700 active troops in and around Los Angeles, 4,700. In Iraq and Syria, the US has 2,500 troops. So there are more troops, more US troops deployed to an American state than West Asia. California Governor Gavin Newsom has slammed this deployment. He says Trump has weaponized the US troops.
He again chose escalation. He chose more force. He chose theatrics over public safety. He federalized another 2,000 Guard members. He deployed more than 700 active U.S. Marines. These are the men and women trained for foreign combat, not domestic law enforcement.
But even with this mega deployment, the situation is spiraling out of control. Yesterday, a huge crowd gathered outside a hotel in the county. This was after unconfirmed social media reports. They claimed that ICE members were living in those hotels. ICE stands for America's Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They are behind the anti-immigration raids in Los Angeles. Social media posts claim that they were staying in this hotel, so several protesters gathered outside. But as LA continues to simmer, protests have spread across the United States. In New York, Seattle, Chicago, Boston, Austin, Dallas, Las Vegas, and Washington, D.C. In some cities, mayors have announced a state of emergency. There's a curfew after protesters blocked roads. In Seattle, 8 people have been arrested, 3 have been detained in Arizona, yet Donald Trump is not convinced. The U.S. president says he has no clue about the nationwide protests.
Protests have spread down to 16 cities across the U.S.
Well, I don't know. That's what you're saying. Do I believe you? I don't think so.
Well, I got that.
I can tell you that what we have is a situation in Los Angeles that was caused by gross incompetence. They didn't have the police to handle it. The police were asking us to come in. They were very late. We had to go in to save a lot of ICE officers, as you know, who were held up. They were holed up in a building, and they were being attacked. And the military went in, the National Guard went in and got them. The police weren't able, unfortunately, to move fast enough, but we moved fast enough. And while we were there, we stayed there, and we stopped tremendous destruction and death.
Well, Trump may be clueless, but things are heating up across the United States, and it will only get worse this weekend. Saturday is the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. It is also President Donald Trump's birthday. There's a mega military parade in Washington, D.C., the largest that the city has seen in decades. At the same time, American cities are bracing for mega protests. It's called the No Kings Rallies. More than 1,800 such rallies are planned for that day. Organized by the 50501 movement. This stands for 50 protests, 50 states, one movement, 50501. The group believes that Donald Trump is acting like an authoritarian, hence the name of the protest, No Kings. Texas has already deployed the National Guard. Anyone protesting will be detained. So on one side, there's a president hosting a parade with tanks, troops and flags. On the other is a nation on edge, a nation that is protesting, not celebrating. This weekend, America will be a tale of two cities, the capital, where Trump will put on a show of power, and the streets, where Americans will march to show defiance. Which one will history remember? The man in the parade or the people on the streets? Because come Saturday, the US won't just be celebrating its army, it will be testing its democracy. Let's turn to the UK now. It seems to be hosting an unwanted guest, part-time leader of Bangladesh and full-time travel enthusiast, Mohammed Yunus. He is on a 4-day trip to London. It's his 11th foreign tour in just 10 months. Yunus may not have restored stability in Bangladesh, but he certainly racked up the air miles. Just one problem though, nobody seems eager to meet him. Look at this report in the British media. It says UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer declined to meet Mohammed Yunus. Dhaka requested a meeting with him, but Starmer said, no thanks. For most leaders, this would be insulting, but not Mohammed Yunus. He's getting used to rejection. Yunus was supposed to be in France this week. He was slated to attend a UN conference on oceans. But as it turned out, he did not go. He came to the UK instead. Any idea why? Reports say Yunus sought a meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron, but Macron's office denied the request. They said the president was squeezed for time. So Yunus cancelled the trip altogether. He came to the UK only to be rejected again. That's 2 rejections in 20 days. Clearly, the world does not have time for him. Nonetheless, he is pushing on. Mohammed Yunus has 2 goals in London. The first is to rally support for his campaign against Sheikh Hasina. Yunus says Hasina smuggled money out of Dhaka. How much money? Up to $234 billion. Let's put that figure in perspective. Bangladesh's GDP is $455 billion. Yunus says Sheikh Hasina smuggled half of that from Dhaka. He believes that this money is stashed in places like the UK and Canada, hence his outreach to London. That's the first goal. The second one is to meet a top opposition leader. His name is Tariq Rahman. He is the acting chairman of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. He is also the son of former Prime Minister Khalida Zia. When elections are held, he will lead the BNP. So why is he in London? Tariq Rahman fled Bangladesh in 2008. He faced multiple cases during Sheikh Hasina's rule, so he chose to stay in exile. Now, most of those cases have been quashed. So chances are Rahman could return to Dhaka. But Yunus's concerns are different. He needs a ceasefire with the BNP, Rahman's party. We're talking about the biggest political party in Bangladesh. As things stand, they're expected to win the election, which is why the BNP wants early polls. They want elections by December this year, but Yunus has declared polls for April next year. He will be hoping to convince Tariq Rahman on this issue, basically to try and get him on board. That meeting is scheduled for Friday and we'll be tracking it closely. In the meantime, let's look at what Yunus has been saying in London. As always, he spoke about India, about a conversation he had with Prime Minister Modi. Yunus says he asked Prime Minister Modi to rein in Sheikh Hasina, to ask her to stop making comments. And Modi's response? Listen to how Yunus recounted it.
When I had a chance to talk to Prime Minister Modi, I just simply said, you want to host her? I cannot force you to abandon that policy. But please help us in making sure she doesn't speak to Bangladeshi people the way she is doing. Modi's answer, I quote, he said, it's a social media, we cannot control it. What can you say? It's an explosive situation. You can't just walk away by saying it's a social media.
So Prime Minister Modi said he cannot curb what leaders say, especially on social media. But Yunus says he has a problem with that. He wants India to gag Sheikh Hasina. Well, here's a question for Mohammed Yunus. Why don't you ask Elon Musk and X to silence Sheikh Hasina? Most of her messages were released on her party's X account. If you think they're problematic, ask X to ban her. Of course, Yunus has not done that. Instead, he has rewarded Elon Musk with a contract. He has approved the Starlink service in Bangladesh. Do you see the hypocrisy here? The fact is, this is not about Sheikh Hasina's statements or speeches. Yunus himself claims that Bangladesh has rejected her. So why fear a rejected leader? This is about undermining Bangladesh's liberation legacy. Sheikh Hasina is a key part of that legacy, and so is India, which fought for Bangladesh in 1971. Yunus's war is with that legacy. Let's hope the people of Bangladesh can fight back. Next week, Canada will host the G7 summit. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be in attendance. Ahead of his visit, Canada has busted a massive drug network. It is being linked to anti-India activities. The operation was named Project Pelican. This is one of Canada's biggest cocaine busts. Nearly 480 kilos of cocaine were recovered. The drugs are worth close to $48 million. 9 people have been arrested. 7 of them are of Indian origin. The police say the money was used to fund extremism. This includes pro-Khalistan protests and referendums. Some reports say the smugglers had the backing of ISI, that is Pakistan's spy agency. Remember, tensions between India and Canada have been running high. The bust may open the doors to rebuild trust, but it also exposes how narco-terrorism hides in plain sight in Canada. Here's a report.
Just days before Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit, Canadian police have made a major bust, and the timing could not be more crucial. This is not just about drugs. It's about politics, security, and a terror network hiding in plain sight. The operation is called Project Pelican. It was led by the Peel Regional Police in Ontario. The target? A massive narco-terror network with international links. The scale is unprecedented. The cops seized over 450 kilograms of cocaine. Its street value is nearly $48 million. These 9 men were apparently running this network. 7 of them are of Indian origin. All of them are based in Canada. They face 35 criminal charges, including possession of firearms and drug trafficking. The investigation began last year. It focused on commercial trucking routes. They were used to move cocaine from Mexico into the U.S. From America, they finally ended up in Canada. Some of the drugs were hidden in shipment containers. Others were seized at major border crossings. But the plot goes deeper. It is beyond cocaine or guns. Reports say this network of drug smugglers had another mission. They were generating funds for anti-India activities on Canadian soil. That includes pro-Khalistan referendums, protests, and even funding for arms. According to one claim, the plot appears to have links to the ISI, that's Pakistan's intelligence agency. Reports suggest the ISI is using Khalistani sympathizers. This is to traffic cocaine supplied by Mexican cartels. Some of that money is believed to be channeled towards campaigns targeting Indian interests. The network may also be involved in moving heroin from Afghanistan. It's a familiar pattern, and for India, a troubling one. India and Canada have had a strained relationship. Last year, diplomatic ties nearly collapsed under the government of Justin Trudeau. Since then, there have been deep fissures. New Delhi has accused Ottawa of providing space and oxygen to Khalistanis. This bust could set the tone for PM Modi's visit. Perhaps even open an opportunity to reset relations. These revelations show how Khalistani extremism isn't just rhetoric. It's being funded, organized, and in this case, armed through drug money. Canada's officials have called the operation a success. They've praised police for the coordinated action. But questions remain. How deep does this network go? Who else is involved? And what happens next? India will be watching this probe closely. It's a chance to call for greater accountability, for cooperation on security, and for clarity from a country that claims to be a partner, but has often looked the other way.
Is something serious brewing in West Asia? To be fair, something is always brewing in that part of the world, but this time it could be more, maybe even a bigger war. Why do we say this? Because the US is pulling out personnel from West Asia. The Americans have ordered a partial evacuation of their embassies in Kuwait, Bahrain, and in Iraq. All non-essential staff have been asked to leave. The Pentagon has also issued an order. It is asking military dependents to leave if they want to. Dependents are mostly family members. They have been given the option of voluntary evacuation. The question is why? Why is this happening? Evacuations usually mean something bad. You evacuate when you are bracing for an attack or a disaster. So what exactly is America bracing for? Listen to what President Donald Trump said.
We're hearing reports that U.S. personnel are being moved out of the region within striking distance.
Well, they are being moved out because it could be a dangerous place, and we'll see what happens. But they are being, we've given notice to move out, and we'll see what happens.
Is there anything that can be done to dial the temperature down in the region?
They can't have a nuclear weapon. Very simple.
So clearly Iran is the trigger, specifically their nuclear program. Trump was hoping to strike a deal with Tehran. His officials have held 5 rounds of talks with them, but so far the negotiations have not made progress. The US says Iran should stop all uranium enrichment. But Iran is not agreeing to that. Tehran says it needs uranium for civilian use, basically to generate power. Then yesterday, things escalated further. The UN atomic watchdog passed a resolution against Iran. It said Tehran was not complying with its nuclear obligations. That too for the first time in 20 years. And how did Iran respond? By opening a 3rd uranium enrichment site. So clearly neither side is backing down, which brings us to the military option. Israel and the US have said this repeatedly. If talks fail, they will destroy Iranian nuclear sites. You just heard Trump say that. The same thing, that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Could such a military operation be on the cards now? Well, there are some indications. On Wednesday, US media carried some worrying reports. They said Israel was fully ready to launch an attack on Iran. Apparently, they had informed the US as well. If true, then the evacuations make sense. Iran does not have weapons to hit American mainland, but they can hit US assets in West Asia, like embassies or bases. In fact, this has happened before. In 2019, Iranian proxies attacked the US embassy in Iraq, and in 2020, Iran launched missiles at a US base also in Iraq. This time too, Tehran is promising defiance.
Let us believe and put our support in God. We are able to overcome all problems. We are devoted to God. As a result, we are not devoted to America and its allies. This does not mean that we want to fight the world. We want to talk to the world. We will not submit to force, oppression, and bullying.
And what about Israel? Well, Benjamin Netanyahu has always wanted to do this. His ultimate goal is to defang Iran, to take out their nuclear facilities. And he's laid the groundwork to do exactly that. Tehran spent years building a shield of proxies in West Asia. You have the Hezbollah in Lebanon. You have the Houthis in Yemen. You have the Hamas in Gaza, and also a friendly regime in Syria. But Israel has weakened that shield. Hezbollah's top leadership has been wiped out. Hamas is on its knees. The regime in Syria has been toppled. The Houthis are the only ones largely intact, which means that Iran is quite vulnerable at the moment. If you are Netanyahu, you may be tempted to strike Iran. But the question is, what happens after that? Tehran's nuclear facilities are underground. Experts say Israel cannot destroy them alone. They would need help from the US. If not military help, then at least logistical help. like mid-air refueling of fighter jets and bunker buster bombs. So striking alone is a big risk for Israel, and chances are Trump wanted to give diplomacy a chance. He campaigned on a platform of no war. The last thing he wants is another one in West Asia. A lot depends on that diplomatic gamble. Both American and Iranian officials will meet in Oman on Sunday. If those talks succeed, West Asia may step back from the brink. If not, all bets are off. Our next story is from Vietnam. It is bracing for a revolution, an administrative revolution. That's what the government is calling it. They're merging provinces and cities. They're shutting down government agencies and they're firing 100,000 government employees. It's a massive cost-cutting campaign and the country's most aggressive one yet. But what triggered it? Trump tariffs. You see, Vietnam is a global manufacturing hub in Southeast Asia. Its economy depends on exports and Trump's tariffs are bleeding it. Hence the overhaul. But will it pay off? Here's a report.
Vietnam wants to modernize itself. It wants to jumpstart economic growth. So the Southeast nation is undergoing an administrative revolution. This is a broad campaign. It involves elimination of about 100,000 public sector jobs, which is about 15% of the one-party state's entire bureaucracy. The number of provinces and cities is being cut by half. And several ministries are either being eliminated or merged. This so-called revolution comes after a long period of changes. It all began in 2016. Vietnam launched an aggressive anti-corruption campaign. It was dubbed the Blazing Furnace. It toppled 2 presidents, several cabinet ministers, and thousands of lower-level staff. To Lum was the campaign's chief enforcer. He served as the public security minister at the time. Last year, he became the Communist Party's new chief, the most powerful political figure in Vietnam. And for months now, he has been spearheading new cost-cutting reforms. He says that if we want to have a healthy body, sometimes we must take bitter medicine and endure pain to remove tumors. Earlier this year, the government merged 5 cabinet ministries and 3 national-level agencies, resulting in about 23,000 job cuts. And now, lawmakers have voted to reduce the 63 provincial and city administrations to just 34. Currently, Vietnam has a 3-level administrative structure. This includes province, district, and commune. After the merging, this will be a 2-tiered structure. The middle level, which is the district, will be eliminated. This will result in about 80,000 job cuts. But what's behind these moves? Mostly economics. Vietnam is a global manufacturing hub. It has recorded economic growth of 7.1% in 2024, and it is aiming for 8% growth this year. But this ambition is huge. Over the years, Vietnam has flung its doors open to investment. It is home to manufacturing bases of Adidas, Apple, Intel, Samsung Electronics, and hundreds of other companies. Its economy depends on exports. Net exports to the U.S. account for about 1/5 of Vietnam's GDP. But now, U.S. President Donald Trump threatens it. On April 2nd, Trump's Liberation Day tariffs targeted Vietnam with a 46% rate. This is one of the highest for any country, and it could devastate the Vietnamese economy. While the tariffs have been put on hold until July, the Vietnamese government is afraid. It has dispatched several delegations to Washington, but it also wants a plan B, hence the reforms. They are expected to save more than $5 billion in the state budget over the next 5 years, and fuel economic progress by slashing the bureaucratic red tape. Though this is not the only reason. The overhaul is taking place ahead of the Communist Party's National Congress in January 2026. This is held every 5 years to elect the next generation of leaders. To Lum is believed to be seeking another term as General Secretary. He is widely seen as the main contender as well, and he stands to benefit from the restructuring. But it is a big risk. The reward is questionable. And the changes are breeding frustration among state workers. So will the blazing furnace drive reap the rewards or burn the house down? Vietnam will soon find out.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. The solar orbiter releases the first ever images of the sun's south pole. Protesters in Kenya set cars on fire over suspected police brutality, and Russians celebrate their national day with concerts and festivals. Finally, taking you back in history, on this day in 1964, Nelson Mandela was sentenced to life imprisonment. Mandela opposed the apartheid regime in South Africa. He was accused of treason and sent to prison for 27 years. Nelson Mandela's release in 1990 was a turning point in South Africa's history. He later became the first post-apartheid president of the country. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.